Okay, welcome to today's CenterEdge software webinar. We're just going to wait an additional minute just to make sure that everyone has a chance to check any audio issues or connection issues before we get started. Okay, well, once again, welcome to today's CenterEdge software webinar. This is day 3 of our new manager training session. Today, we're going to go over item maintenance, categories and subcategories, and inventory control. I will be your trainer. I'm Alex. I've been with CenterEdge for almost about 1.5 years, and I'll be doing today's review. Also with us is Jessica. Jessica has been with us, I think, almost a little over 2 years. She will be facilitating and moderating today. And then if she'll help clarify any specific points or highlight anything that is needed during the training. A couple of house items, type your questions. If you have anything, type them in the box. She'll be able to answer those for you. And then obviously raise your hand. If you can't hear anything, or if you need me to slow down, or if you'd like me to review something, we are going to hold questions until the very end of today's training. So if you guys could keep track of those, we'll be sure to get to them when we get a chance. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and switch screens. And here we go. You should be able to see it. Jessica, can you see the other screen?
Yep, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. All right. So obviously, the very first time that you log into the manager console, the default screen is always going to go to cash control. Where we're going to spend the bulk of today's webinar is on inventory and item maintenance. So I'm going to click on that. That's the second one on the left. And it pulls up a whole host of different icons and different functions. But where we're going to start today is in item maintenance. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. Item maintenance is important because this is basically where you're going to create everything in the system, everything that you're going to use, everything that you're going to need to process anything. You're going to create them right here. And if I scroll down to the left-hand side, you're going to see a whole different types of items that I've created. I've created food, I've created gift cards. You're going to see some passes, some drinks, some barcode tickets, some different attraction options. So all of those, you're going to create them here. It's very likely though that you already have them created in your system. So it's just some review. So here at the top is where you can filter those specific items. You can start typing in them and it'll pull up what you're typing if you're looking for a specific item type. This is where you can filter for that, as well as by category, subcategory, and then whether that item, is active, retired, or suspended. What it does is, if you have an item that's active and you've decided to retire it, so I'll show you where that is. Right here, it says item status. If you change it to retired, suspended, or undecided, it's going to hide it as an active item, but you can always search for it. That is the nature of your database. You can never really delete anything. You can just hide items. So let's take a look at our item types. So I'm going to go ahead and hit add. And what you're going to do is, a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. So if you're going to add an item, you would put in the description. And the difference between description and receipt text is basically what it means. So if you have a system description, but you don't want it to be reflected in the receipt, you would put in a different text for that particular receipt. Otherwise, if you leave it blank, whatever is in the description is what's going to default to your receipt. So type of item. We have more than 16 different types of items, and they have additional functions based on what you need. So most of what you're going to create are going to be retail items. If you happen to have a package item, like maybe a combo or a party, gift bag or something like that, just by changing that to this, you'll notice that here at the top, we have a different tab that was populated. So basically, if it's a package, what you're going to do is you're going to add all of those items that are going to go in this package right here. And obviously, all of those package items are items that you created previously. All right, cool. So if we go back to, and you'll see, I definitely recommend you take a look at what you guys have in the system. If you need to create additional similar items, the cool thing about the system is that you can do the copy. So let's say you have everything in the system, maybe you're adding a different flavor or a different color or a different size. You can just hit that copy function at the bottom, just change the wording, and you don't have to worry about any specific other things if it's almost identical to that particular item. All right, so let's go ahead and cancel another water bottle. So some continuing on, we kind of looked at the different items, like for example, barcode ticket. If I selected that, we can see that now we have different options that are populated, ticket format, different tickets. Now we have a ticket tab at the top, and we have some additional options that pertain to this particular item. And we have documentation that goes over all of these in depth if you have questions about that particular setup. So let's go back to a retail item. And let's kind of look at some additional items. So this is going to be an active item. Start date and end date, what that means is the availability of this item for use and for sale. So you may have items that are seasonal. Maybe you have a promotional item, you would go ahead and select the start date, and it would be active on that date that you selected it to the end date, which is when it would no longer be active. So now this brings me on to the second portion of what we're going to talk about today, which is categories and subcategories. If you're going to create an item, you will always have to select a category and a subcategory. There's no way to bypass this in the system. This is part of one of the features that we offer is part of our reports, is that you have a way of categorizing and subcategorizing all of your inventory items, and that way you can filter your reports and see things like your best sellers, or look at things that you guys are using a lot in the system. And so you're going to have to create them if you haven't created them already. More than likely, you actually have some in the system. I do have some in the system. So if I click like the drop-down menu, I can see that I have these that I have pre-created, as well as any that pertain to that particular category. So your categories and your subcategories, they can be, you can have as many as you'd like and as little as you like. What is important is ease of use and how you're going to use them operationally. If you have way too many categories and you really only end up using one or two, well, then there's no need to have the other ones. And so I would just recommend disabling them. Again, you can't delete them if you've created them and if you've already used them, but you can hide them so that you're not confused about whether the item should be saved in this category or in this category, just so that you guys can keep yourself organized and you guys, oops, hit the wrong button, know where everything is saved. So you can actually create those directly from item maintenance by clicking on the caret, right? And then also, you can also access them right here in categories. So since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can add an additional category. And then we'll talk a little bit about taxes, because taxes are actually assigned in the subcategory. So let's create one. So maybe you want to create a category for cabanas, just as an example. Anything that you want associated to a particular area, cabanas, we'll call it that. So by hitting add, the system is going to generate whatever's next. So if the last category that I created was number 9, it's going to generate the next one. I'm going to call this cabanas, but this could be something that is actually useful to your site. So if what I have in the system is like admissions and attractions, I have food and beverage. You could do entrees and appetizers. Again, things that you're going to use in real time that are going to help you keep your reports organized for you to understand what is being saved under which category and subcategory. So this one is the cabana. Right here, it says enable category. That's what I was talking about in terms of disabling it. So if you have some categories that you just never use or are obsolete, by clicking that, it'll disable it and it won't show up in item maintenance. So let's go ahead and add a subcategory, because again, we have a category, now I need the subcategory. So I'm gonna click on that. So some people will quickly start typing, but nothing's gonna happen because the system is gonna require you to add it. So we see that it's new. Let's add it. Again, generate. This is the first the first subcategory. If you had 3 different ones before it, this would be number 4. And maybe we have 2 different cabana places where we're going to sell. So maybe we have pool cabanas and indoor cabanas. You're going to go ahead and create that. And so what I was talking about in terms of taxes is this is where you're going to want to make sure if you're taxing those items that you have selected yes. So it's always going to be by default, it's going to be no. But if you want these items to be taxed, you have to make sure that you select that. A case scenario where you wouldn't select it is usually going to be something like gift cards, because gift cards are not going to be taxed. Obviously, that's dependent on your state and also maybe your county. So that's when you wouldn't tax it. But this is Texas. So we're going to go ahead and enable that and select it yes. If you have questions about where you can change your taxes and your tax rates, let us know. It's going to be in maintenance, and we have actual documentation for what that looks like and where to edit that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, so now we've created that. Let's go ahead and let's add this item. It's going to be a retail item because we're selling it. So maybe it's a Cabana refill drink. And it is active, and we're going to sell this as a Cabana item. And now that is the pool item. We could also create an indoor cabana area. We can create a lot of different things that we can do in the system. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and look at the next portion, which is inventory control. Now, if you wanted to do, this would be a great example for something that's like simple. So let me just save this really quick. Let me pull one up that's simple. So when I talk about simple, I'm talking about in terms of like single, like packaged items, maybe like a water bottle or chips, bags of chips, or single items. This is kind of like the first level of kind of like a basic way to do inventory control. And then we'll have a chance to talk about recipes in a minute. So let's look at this drink bottle. We want to kind of show what the process is for auditing this portion and tracking that. So I'm going to remove that. All right, cool. So edit again. Step 1. So here's the item that we want to track the inventory on. Right here, it says auditable inventory. We're going to go ahead and select that. The cool thing about our system is that if you hover over some of these descriptions, here at the bottom, it'll explain what the function is. So you should never be particularly confused about what they do. It'll explain it for you. So now we're going to do auditable inventory. Remember, when we select that, it's going to add that tab, right? So here we have the units tab. If I go back to the main tab, I deselect it, it's gone. So let's click on that. And we're going to go to the units tab. So when we look at this information, what this is tracking is how it's going out, how we're tracking it. So on the left-hand side, how it's going out, well, it's being sold by the each. And then how are we counting it? Well, we're counting it individually. Okay, this is as simple as it gets for maybe a 24 pack of water bottles. So we're counting them and then we're selling them by the each. Now, in terms of receiving, so how are we receiving it and how are we going to audit it in the system? So we are going to receive, we buy these in, for example, a 24 pack of water bottles, which is 2 dozen. We're actually receiving them in dozens, right? And how are we going to audit them? You can audit them either by the eaches or by the dozen. So we typically see sites doing it by the larger auditing unit because it's kind of less math, if that makes sense. So if I went into the back office and I saw that there was 36 water bottles, I could say that I'm gonna count them by 3 dozens as opposed to 36, and then I had 7 extra, then I would do that math. It doesn't matter, it's just kind of another way to audit it is in larger whole numbers as opposed to individual numbers. So we're gonna also audit this by the dozen. And we do by this per the case. And this is actually 24 per the case. So that's what that's gonna look like. You have a lot of different options to do that. If we look at the bottom right, where here it says, if the item doesn't come in any one of these units that we see right here under description, you can just leave it blank. You can also receive by weight. So if we enable that, if you have like a digital packing list or an electronic packing list, by enabling that, it's going to calculate that. So if you see here at the bottom, it has that description for that. That's one way to do that. And also, if, for example, maybe there is a unit that you guys are using that's not reflected here in their system, you can actually customize that. So I know we've had some sites that they sold tablecloths, like they had a huge roll of tablecloths and they would cut them out for the size of the table. And so they measured that and they were able to track the inventory usage of that tablecloth length. I don't know if it was 3 feet or 4 feet. So we can customize those in the system for your particular site need. And then you can audit it and track it that way as well. So the other things to look for. So once we've done the units of measure, we want to look at some other options in order to upload this information when we do receive a packing list. And part of that is assigning a vendor. So if you have a vendor in the system, and it will show you how to add them, this is where you would select the vendor. So maybe I purchased this from this particular vendor. They sell them at a dozen. They sell them, if they sold it at $2 a dozen, but we're buying 24. So that would be $4 a dozen. That's where you would enter the standard cost. If they have a stock number that's associated with that particular item, you would enter it there. Other options that you can do as well is if that particular product has its own barcode and you have a scanner, you can go ahead and click in there, scan the item, and then that barcode will be saved here. And if you had needed to print that barcode or print the retail price with the barcode, you could go ahead and print it and attach it to whatever retail items that you are selling. Other things is particular notes. Anything that is going to be useful for this item, you would enter it here. And then if we go to the detailed tab, you right here at the bottom is where you would look at the reordered level. So you would set the units for sale. So every time you sell it, you would sell 1 water bottle. If you were selling cookies, you could also do 2 cookies for sale right here, if that's where you would enter that. And then the system has an auto reorder level purchase order, and we'll go over that. And so if you want to keep at a build level, so build to however many dozens, you would enable that. So it says check here if you want to maintain a constant inventory level, or if you want to reorder when it falls below a certain level. So if it gets down to 1 dozen, we want to make sure that we keep it at 2 dozen. Once it gets below 2, sorry, it would know that it has to be ordered, or we always want to make sure that we keep it at 2 dozens for this particular item. And then reordered lead days, obviously, how many do you need to, what's the quantity? And then if it takes 3 days for it to be delivered, you would go ahead and enter that as well. Other things is in terms of inventory control is stock rooms. So your site may utilize different stock rooms. Maybe you have it in the main stock room and then you have an additional stock room. If you click here, it would let you select the additional stock room where this item is going to be added to when you have the inventory. Okay. All right, Jessica, anything else to add about that setup? I'm going to go over recipes in a bit.
I don't believe so. Yeah, I think you got everything covered there.
Sweet, thank you. All right, cool. So let's talk about recipes. So this was an example of something that was relatively simple a water bottle or something like a t-shirt or a bag of chips. But some sites want to be able to track actual recipes. So in-house, they make their own pizza. So in order to create a recipe, we're going to have to create all of the recipe items that are going to go into that recipe, and then also tracking all of the quantities for that particular item. So if we look at a pizza, for example, and I have a pizza with topping choices. So you can see that this particular item is a recipe. And because we've selected recipe, now we see that the recipe items are all the things that are going to go into making this particular pizza. So we have a pizza crust, marinara sauce, mozzarella cheese, and then you see that we have the quantity that we're going to need for this particular pizza. So first step is to make all of those items, right? So if I go to my pizza crust, let me spell it correctly. Yes, there you go. My pizza crust. So I created it as a non-retail item because I'm not going to sell this particular pizza crust individually. Now you can sell any of those toppings as a retail item, and we'll have a chance to look at those. So I've created my pizza crust, and here are my units. So this particular item, I purchased it from my vendor, and I purchased it by the case. You can see on the right, I actually have 24 pizza crusts in a case, and I sell them individually, right? That's how it's being sold, and that's the unit that it's being sold. So that's how I've set that up. I have my vendor, which is All Foods, and I don't think I wrote any notes, but that's my unit right now. So that would be my pizza crust. And then I have my marinara sauce. Go to that. I've also set that up as a non-retail item. And these are my units. So this particular one, I use it by the ounce. I receive it in the case, and the unit we're using is a volume. I'd recommend, if you've never done one, taking a look at what options show up when you change these, because they vary. And like I said, you may find that one of these receiving units or unit types, they aren't going to work well for you because that's just not how you guys are using it. So we could also change it to, I believe we can do British measurements. We'll take a look at that. Or even modifying how you use them. Maybe you use half an ounce or a quarter ounce. We can create those, and then we can add those here as well. So this particular marinara sauce, we're receiving it in the case, but we actually use the bottles. So I think we have a can that's like 6 pounds and 11 ounces. So what we did was we just multiplied however many ounces are in a pound to get that total unit. And then if we get a can of 6 or 4, I don't remember which one we did, we multiplied that by how many ounces are in a pound. And that's how we got that total amount for that auditing purpose. So we've done that with the marinara, and we've done that with the cheese, which is the mozzarella cheese. We do pound, and then we do 80 ounces. If it doesn't apply to either one of these in this box, then you can leave it empty, but you will need to put calculate what that is. You'll have to do the math for how many pounds and how many ounces. So we have the recipe. Let's go back to the recipe, which is the cheese. Actually, let's take pizza. I have pizza with topping choices. So there you go. So we created all these individual items. We did the units of measure for each item. And now when we create our recipe, we're going to enter the quantity that we're going to use each time this recipe is created. So you can see that we're going to use 1 pizza crust because it's each. We're going to use 8 ounces of marinara sauce, and we're going to use 6 ounces of mozzarella cheese. I'm not sure if I'm being very generous or if I'm not being generous enough, but those are the quantities that I set aside. Yours will vary, obviously, by the different types of sizes that you guys use, and how, whichever method you decide to pre-package that. I know some places sell like cheddar cheese or the gooey cheese, and those are already pre-packaged, and then they sell those individually. They created package them on site, and then they sell those as well. All right, so that's how you would do that for that particular units of measure. Now, what about toppings? That's a great question. So I've created a modifier, and if you're not familiar with modifiers, definitely recommend taking a look at some of our documentation. But basically, it's the same kind of the same concept. So I've gone ahead and created my pizza toppings. So let me see. Let me pull that down. Pizza toppings. Yep. So I literally went into the system, just like everything else that you have to create. I created all of these items: Canadian bacon, pepperoni, extra cheese, pineapple. Some of these veggie items and meat items, those are going to obviously, you will have scaled them. You have a scale on site. You're going to weigh how many onions, and a portion of onions, a portion of mushrooms, a portion of bell pepper, if you want to be that granular. Some sites just do pepperoni, and some sites just do cheese, and some sites don't do pizza at all, but this is kind of just to show you what that looks like. So I've created all of these items in the system. I have attached them to this multi-select template. And now whenever I click on them, the quantity, so maybe the pepperoni is 8 ounces, maybe the cheese is 8 ounces, we'll assume that all of these are 8 ounces. Every time somebody wants to add additional pepperoni to their pizza, what is subtracted is that quantity. So 1 8-ounce quantity of pepperoni is removed or is taken out of the system. The same thing with the pineapple and the olives. Maybe you want to adjust that. Maybe your ounces of pepperoni is maybe half an ounce. So then whenever they get the extra toppings, you're going to change that quantity to 2. So you can do that dependent on your site and however you want to portion those out. But that's how this is going to remove it from the system, is right here on that quantity tab or that quantity box. All right, so that's one part. Now, the next part is actually looking at those vendors. So you're going to create your vendors right here. In order to save a vendor, you're going to take a look at your agreement with your vendor, so we can organize them in the system by the type of vendor that you have. So if you have a food vendor, a regular vendor, maybe a redemption vendor, you would just add them. You would give it I believe it's class number doesn't auto generate. So let's see what happens. Maybe let's just type in redemption. And it auto populated it for you. So now we have an additional vendor. So you may have one vendor that does everything, or you may have various vendors. So you're going to create them here. And then your vendor terms. So they may be different. Each vendor may have different payment terms that they use, maybe net 90, net 60. So you'll create additional ones. I believe the system defaults to just a few, one or two, I believe. So if they have different terms, you can actually add those and enter the description and save it in the system. So once you've created your vendor classes and your vendor terms, you can go to your vendors and you can add them. So these are the ones that I've added. You can use, I believe, vendors like Costco and Walmart and Sam's Club. You can enter that information as well. These are the ones that I've entered, so you can see what kind of vendor class it is. It's a regular vendor, the credit terms, and then if they've provided with you credit limit, you can enter that information. You'll want to fill out this information if you want to be able to utilize the email option that we have, because you can email a purchase order directly from the system. We'll take a look at that as well. So that's where you add them. So once you've added them, if we go back to this item, here's where we're going to see that. And that's going to be important in order to auto generate that. And there we go. Okay, get exit out of here. So let's say we want to create a purchase order. Let's double click on that. And we're going to go ahead and hit add at the bottom. It's always going to prompt you for a vendor. So we'll do all foods. Auto generate PO is going to let you know. So if you recall, when we were looking at that portion on the detail tab of the item, where it's reorder level or bill to level, it's going to pull, this is going to pull from those settings, and it's going to let you know that you need to reorder to keep it at a consistent level, or it's fallen below a level. And so now you need to order these particular items. So you'll hit OK. You can auto generate a purchase order number right there. There's the order date. If you have an expected ship date, you can go ahead and enter that. You can click, click and go all through all of the items. Again, it's only going to show the items that correspond to this vendor. So if you don't see something, it's likely under a different vendor. So you'll want to make sure that you change that setting. You can search for here, do an inventory search there. You can also find the item as well and search for it right there. And then this is letting me know that I'm below Pizza Crust and what the order units are based on how I purchase them. So I purchase potato chips by the cases, and I purchase hamburger buns by the dozen. And so there's that. So if we go to the top, sorry, let's go back to info. This is where I'm talking about where you're going to see the information on the vendor, any particular notes you'd enter, and this will allow you to email the purchase order directly to the individual or print it out as well. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So we've emailed this purchase order to the vendor, and we have received our shipment of inventory. So now we're going to receive the inventory. So we'll double click on that as soon as it was. Okay, you're going to always select the stockroom where it's going to go to. So we want it to go to our entire site. Who's the vendor? All Foods Inc. And the purchase orders. This is a purchase order that I have open. This is the one and it's imported it. And now that it's imported it, if I hit OK, it's going to update in my QOH for those particular items. Yes. And I believe it's going to give me a printout. Usually that happens if it takes a minute for it to load. There we go. So we can print that, we can save that. So I'll close it. Adjust receipts, maybe you need to adjust something. I think typically where I've seen this is if the purchase order wasn't correct, maybe there were some items that were missing, or they didn't give you everything, or something was broken or wasn't in good condition. I would adjust that receipt to reflect the fact that there's been a change. I believe this is my understanding. Jessica, can you confirm?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, cool. Thanks. All right, cool. So I'm going to close that. The other things, transfer inventory is pretty self-explanatory. You would just transfer from that to that, and then you would select items that you're going to transfer from one stockroom to stockroom. So we'll cancel it. Yeah, sorry. So the next thing to take a look at would be audits. So you're a new manager and your boss tells you, I need you to audit everything in the system. If you've been using our system, this is great, because then you're just kind of updating what you have, but maybe it's blind. Maybe you have no idea what's available. So we're going to start this. So let's call this just an audit. Audit 1. And this is the dates that it's being audited. You can have a range of dates. This is just defaulting to today. Blind, so you're gonna audit everything. Okay, you have additional options. So show QOH, enter all counts, so QOH, enter differences, but let's do blind just so that you can see what that looks like. The system is going to select everything. So all those categories that we just created, but maybe you don't need all of these categories. Maybe you're just like, no, I just need the food. And again, the food is going to show the subcategories when we get there, I believe. So food and beverage. We only have 3 things in here. Interesting. And then item type. So maybe you just want to see, you don't care about tickets, but I want to see modifier items, non-retail items, and retail items. Hit next. Do I want to do it for all vendors? You can select specific vendors that you want to do it for, and then items that are active. So we'll hit next. This is everything that we have in the system for all the vendors. We're going to hit next. Do I want to add more items? It'll always let you adjust that, but let's hit no, and let's hit finish. And it's going to generate a document. And with this document, you're going to go into your stockroom or wherever you keep your inventory, and you're actually going to count what you have and you're going to write it out, which is super cool, especially if you're starting from scratch and you need to keep track. You can see I have to update some of my inventory. I'm negative 41 pounds in curly fries. So you would print this out. The system will save it for you if you haven't been able to finish, but it won't update anything until you actually complete the audit. So I'm going to close it. Let's say you lost the paper and you don't remember where you left it. Go back to print audit count, select the one that we just created, hit OK. And once again, it's gonna load and you'll be able to see them. There we go. So close it. Once you've had a chance to actually write everything down, you can update those here, right? So the larger unit, so maybe you have, 36 bottles of water. You're gonna put 3 dozen right here. And you have, 6 extra bottles or 4, something like that. You're gonna enter all of those. And then I believe it's just gonna save it for you. It's not gonna do anything. It's just for you to keep track of all of those. And then when you're actually done, or maybe you need to cancel it and you need to go back and add additional items, you can go ahead and cancel that. But when you're finished with all of those, you've had a chance to enter it. When you hit OK, it's going to complete and post the audit that you just completed. And it's going to update your quantities on hand in the system. So that's pretty much what we have in terms of your vendors, purchase orders. Now, the next thing just to kind of go over is I talked about multiple stock rooms. You can access that right here. You're going to create them. So these are the ones that I've created in the system. Maybe you have certain items that are going to need to go in 2 different stock rooms. This is where you create the extra stock rooms. I go back to item maintenance. This is where you're going to add that stock room. We want water bottles in the redemption area and also the main stock room as well. Units of measure. So this is where you're going to change those units of measure. Or what, by default, you're going to have them. I wouldn't recommend changing them. You can certainly add additional ones. So maybe we have like a tablecloth and we want it to be in feet. And this is a gross example, but you would put it, to something like that. I've seen people use tins. I've seen people create their own, 2 ounces or 3 ounces, because it's just easier for them than having to put in 1 ounce each time. So that's where you can add those. And then the other thing is, I believe, just your categories, remember. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all that I have covered for today. Jessica, anything you'd like to highlight or anything that I should go over?
No, nothing I can think of. The only thing is that you can also manually update inventory in item maintenance on the info tab.
There you go. You can adjust it, right? Here we
Yep,
go.
right there. And that's if you need to do it, manually for any particular items. You don't need to do a whole audit, maybe just for a few select things.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, that's what we have for today for item maintenance. Any questions? If you have any questions, by all means. It looks like I'm only seeing Jackie. Jackie, if you have any questions, I think you're the guest of honor today. You're welcome to raise your hand or to type in the chat box. It is a lot to go over. I mean, each site is different. Some sites have already kind of done some setup, so it's not overwhelming, and some sites have never done that. So obviously we recommend, that's what we're here for, is to help you out. This is the link if you needed to book a training with us. The other thing, let me make sure I'm sharing the right. Well, before I change screens, if you are, is it still showing my manager console? I think that's the screen.
Yep, so on the manager console.
Yeah, I did see a couple questions. So let me actually just show you, if you ever need to access our help center, if you go to the question mark at the bottom and you select online help, that will take you directly to our help center. And then you can also schedule a training. But yeah, let me just see if I can. Jackie, you should be able to.
Hello.
Hey,
Is it just me?
you're the guest of honor today. Yeah.
That's too funny. No, that was all really helpful. So I actually just took over in this new position at my company. So I'm just trying to get caught up and learn everything because I'm going to be the one overseeing all of our centerage. So.
Gotcha. For sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, feel free to book a training. You can access our link from the help center. It's also, let me change screen so that you can see that right here. You'll be able to book with one of us.
Yep.
And yeah, anything else you need, feel free to reach out to us, and that's what we're here for.
If it is just me, can I ask a completely unrelated question?
Yeah, for sure.
So one of the biggest things that we've been trying to figure out is like our events reporting. We're trying to figure out how so right now how we do it is we have like event buttons. So anything that's an event is like its own button. And so it just rings under one till. We're trying to find a way that like if I'm a server, I want to ring it under my own number. And that way obviously, if I ring the event button, it'll still report to events. But say they just want to add an extra pizza. I don't want to make a pizza button and an event pizza button. But I want it to be able to report to events. So one of our sites does it like everything's under the same till, but then we have to do like mental calculus to figure out how to tip people out because it's like 10 people using the same till.
Gotcha. So rather than having to create two different types of pizzas, one that goes to events and one that goes to.
Yeah. Is there any other way to do it?
Jessica, what are you thinking?
Yeah, we've got like one person's idea was like, well, we can create all the buttons and then have divisions, but then we would need a whole separate computer and we don't want to like double our amount of POSs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's not just me who doesn't have an answer to this question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to see. I mean, honestly, I think it's something that we need to like remote in and see what it means, what's that looking like, and then we can brainstorm and give you some options. Because I'm like, I need to see it so that I know what's going on. Do you concur, Jessica, or do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I need to see it just because I kind of need to see visually what the issue is and what we could do to solve it.
All right.
Sorry,
No worries.
We can't help you unless we see it.
I'm a visual learner.
I would, yeah. So definitely reach out. That link is right there. You can see what's available. And if we'll brainstorm it with our team and see what options they have, and then we'll let you know.
Thanks.
Cool. All righty. Well, if that's all that we have for today, thank you for showing up. We appreciate it. And we'll for sure chat later. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks.